Welcome to the August 26, 2019 Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for the Town of Raymond. The Zoning Board of Appeals will come to order. The board does have a quorum this evening, and I'm now going to do a roll call, and I'll start on my left.
Rick Welch.
Joanne Stinson.
Len Sorelli.
Louise Lester.
Thank you. This is a public proceeding, and unless the board specifically votes to go into executive session, you have the right to hear everything that's being said and to look at all of the exhibits that are presented. Please notify the chair if you're unable to hear or see. The board works from a published agenda and will be considering tonight's items in the following order. The call to order, which we're doing now, we have new business, a public hearing with an applicant of Zachary Davis requesting a setback reduction. We'll then go over and approve the findings of fact for the last hearing we had, the appeal for the Roma Dobson appeal. Then we will do a bylaws workshop. Then we will discuss a proposed change of meeting day for the Zoning Board of Appeals, then Code Enforcement Officer communications, and eventually adjournment. In each instance, the burden is upon the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the provisions of the applicable ordinances or state law. After the board votes on the merits of each application, it will prepare a written notice of decision. Because the notice of decision may substantially affect any appeals rights, and also as a matter of courtesy, the board asks that those attending the meeting with regards to a specific application not leave until the board has completed its discussion. Generally speaking, appeals from adverse decisions must be filed with the Superior Court as otherwise provided by law within 45 days of this board's decision. Also, to be certain that you preserve your individual right to file any such appeal, you must be certain that the board's record evidences your appearance this evening in opposition and for the basis for your opposition. All persons speaking, including representatives of the applicant and members of the public, are asked to stand at the microphone, to sign the speaker sheet, state their name, address, and affiliation with the application, which was for, opposed, or neutral. All persons speaking shall address all remarks or questions to the chair. The meeting is not over until the board has formally adjourned. Any discussion not included on the meeting agenda or accepted by the board is to be held until after adjournment or conducted outside of the meeting room. So with that, we're going to jump into new business this evening. Again, we have Zachary Davis is the applicant. The location is map 24, lot 20/000, zone LRR1, 66 Swans Road. And the request is for a setback reduction. And before the applicant speaks to this, we did conduct a site walk on, what was the date?
17th.
On the 17th, and Len's gonna fill you in on how the site walk went.
On 8/17/2019, the Board of Appeals completed a site walk for the property located at 66 Swans Road, Raymond, Maine. Present were Joanne Stinson, Len Sorelli, Louise Lester, Zachary Davis, the owner, Lloyd Aspinwall, Roger Cornwell, and one observer. Mr. Davis is requesting a setback reduction to 10 feet on the north end of his property to allow for a two-car garage with an extension of his living room over the garage. There were no objections from the neighbors present. Neighbor Marie Mahoney wrote a note indicating she had no objections. Mr. Davis pointed out to the board members that the setback would only affect a corner of the addition and will fall within the setback area. Mr. Davis walked us around and showed us why he feels that placing the addition on the south side does not appear feasible. The board thanks Mr. Zachary for his time and cooperation. I've got copies of this for the board.
Thank you very much,
For the
Len.
records, you're welcome.
With that, is the applicant present?
I am.
Would you like to present your appeal?
Sure.
Thank
You
you.
guys covered most of the bases. I'm Zach Davis, 66 Swans Road, Raymond. Reaching out, trying to get the setback reduction so I can build a two-car garage with a living space over the top of it. Putting the setback, or putting the addition where we proposed, is the best spot on the property. Doesn't change the lay of the land or any impervious surfaces or anything like that. Helps with the flow of the house. Everything works out well.
Questions?
He needs to sign in.
Oh, I'm sorry, if you don't mind signing in, thank you, Louise.
I have a question. I'll wait till he's finished.
Yeah, I don't wanna throw him off.
Yep.
Mr. Davis, why wouldn't you consider putting your addition on the front of the building toward the lake?
It would be much lower, and the septic tank is right in that lower area.
It would come out that far?
Pretty close. I mean, I don't know if you could build around.
Well, you kind of showed us where the septic was, but I wasn't sure what the distance would
Yeah,
have
I
been.
mean, I don't believe there's enough space, and I wouldn't allow for like the living room to be the same level as the rest of the house.
Okay.
It'd take a lot of earthwork and changing the driveway. I guess I don't really know how you would enter the garage either if you did that, as far as like where the septic is.
Do you mind explaining, just for everyone here, just the layout of your lot? And exactly, you had pointed out what you felt were difficulties in having the garage anywhere else. Because I know you have, it's a double lot there now.
Right, so the area to the left is all wooded. Putting an addition or a garage over on that side would require clearing that whole lot area, putting another driveway in. The way the house is laid out, the bedrooms are on that end, so the house isn't configured so that it would even, it'd have to be all redone. The whole house would have to be redone at that point. It can't go behind the house because there isn't enough room, period, even with some sort of reduction. It's just, behind the house is only, I think, 30 feet or whatever is the minimum requirement, so that wouldn't work. That's why building it over what's the existing driveway and all the heights and elevations and everything just match and work well.
I know it says the proposed addition is 26 by 32.3.
Yes.
What size could you have done without requesting a setback reduction? I'm assuming approximately 10 feet less in width than that.
Yeah, it's actually 8 feet less, so whatever, 24 or 14 feet, or no, sorry.
8 feet would be
Yeah, 18 feet. Approximately, yeah, 18 feet or so.
in width. Okay.
Yeah, so that would only be a one-bay garage basically at that point. It wouldn't give me the 2 full bays.
Any other questions from the board?
No.
Louise? Rick? Okay,
I actually have 2 other letters from neighbors. I don't know if I can present those, or I didn't give them to you 30 days ago, so I don't know if they're still.
yeah, if you could read those to us, that would be wonderful.
Yeah. I got one from Brookman P. March. They have the property behind me. And it just says, Dear board members, Mr. Zachary Davis of Swans Road in Raymond has reviewed his plans for an addition to his home, and he's explained the setback issue to our satisfaction. We support Mr. Davis and his plans for the addition and urge the Zoning Board of Appeals to grant approval. If there are any questions, you can reach us at, and they provided a phone number, and thanks in advance. I have another one. Oh, that's one from Marie. You already have that one. Another one, it says, Zoning Board of Appeal members. I am partial owner of 63 Swans Road. Neither myself nor the other owners of 63 Swans Road object to Zach Davis, Zach Davis's expansion plans that will require a setback reduction. If you need any additional information, please feel free to contact me at, and they give their phone number. Kind regards, Michael Foley.
Zach, where would that be in regards to your property?
So they're across the street and to the right. So
Okay.
they're down.
Down that way. Okay, great. I guess.
I was gonna say, where is Marie Maloney's property
She
in relation
is,
to your house?
if you're on the road looking at our house, she's on the left.
Okay.
77?
Yep, yep.
Yeah.
64.
Yeah, she's 64 Swans Road.
Is it? Oh, I'm recording, that's different numbers than what we have on, right?
Those are
It's a
probably the lot
different-
numbers or,
Yeah, right, it's, because they've got her on the one, it would be on the other side of the second lot that you have.
Correct.
Correct, okay. So just wanted to make sure.
Oh, I
was
see the
looking-
name now,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, no worries,
Yep.
no problem. All right, if there's no other questions, you can have a seat, we can call you up if somebody comes up with any other questions again.
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on behalf of the applicant? In favor of? Okay. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition? Please step up to the podium, sir, and sign in and tell us your name and address.
My name is Lloyd Aspinall, no W, and I live at 71 Swans Road. That's my summer residence. I've been a summer resident in Raymond for over 60 years. My father's cousin owned one of the camps up there, and we loved it so much that we bought an empty lot and built the camp that's there on 71 Swans Road. I have, I'm very concerned about a lot of things on the lake and the life of the lake, as we've seen some of it deteriorate over the years. And I don't like being here to do this. I mean, I was a teacher for 38 years and thought I was done dealing with politics when I retired from teaching. But I'd first like to speak as an abutting owner. My camp is at 71, which is on the other side, but I also own the back lot, which abuts Mr. Davis's property. Okay. Some of my concerns come from the state statutes, and also I was elected to be the road commissioner. I am not speaking on behalf of Raymond Pond Shores Association, but I am the road commissioner and have done a lot of work on the road. And I'm extremely concerned about runoff in all directions. The runoff that comes from all properties has created a lot of silt that's been going into the lake. There is a drainage area that has increased the silt right near my camp. And there's another drainage area that goes through Mr. Foley's property, which is down behind on two lots over from where I am. And there's a culvert that runs across the road in front of Mr. Davis's additional lot. And we recently voted in the association to deal with a lot of the runoff by trying to slow it down and prevent more pollution to the lake. And perhaps if I one of the projects that we've done even recently, I don't know if these, I've got a couple of pictures here.
If you want to bring them up, we'll pass them around. Thank you. And those will be put on the record?
As long as I get a copy of them.
Have this copy.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you go back to the podium and you can explain these to us?
The one in your left hand.
Mm-hmm.
The one in your left hand is the bottom of Mr. Davis's driveway, and there's quite a bit of erosion there. He has done some work to help direct the erosion. The one that second one shows some of the work that has been done to redirect the pitch of the road so that it doesn't run across the street into Mr. Cornwall's yard like it has in the past. And he has recently put in some crushed rock at the end of his driveway to help deal with the runoff that comes across the road and runs into his yard. We're trying to redirect the water so that it goes more into these drainage ditches that are on the side of the road, which is going to take thousands of dollars in work and time. Let me see. I was trying to find the, there it is. That's not it. I was under the understanding that a hardship had to be shown in order.
That's- No, sir, that's not correct with a setback reduction request. That would be with a variance.
Okay. Well, anyway, in addition, there is, let's see if I can find that other portion. If you remember walking up around the property, when you did your site, on the corner where Mr. Davis is asking for the variance, there is a row of rocks and some trees that he is proposing to move. If you looked beyond that, it is approximately a 30-degree angle down over the hill, down onto my property, and with the garage being put in there, and any excavation that is done to disturb that area, the water will be running directly onto my property from that spot. And after it runs onto my property, it will run down the hill, run across the street, and run into my front property that's on the lake. I'm concerned about that situation. I was hoping in the future on that back lot to build a cabin that we've also owned for a number of years. And if we build that cabin up on that hill where you could get some view of the lake, that would end, and we respected the setback of 20 feet, then that would mean that we're changing the type of neighborhood that we have of having one building within 30 feet of another building. And I don't find that appealing. It's going to detract from the value of my property by having a building that close to the property line. Do you want some? I've had two contractors look at the situation, and they've both told me that it will devalue my property by having that garage that close to the property line.
Do you have that in writing?
No, I don't. Would you like a statement or something, or?
Well, this is what you say, but we have nothing to prove that.
I guess, I have a hard time speaking against a neighbor who's a friend, but, I do feel like there are alternatives. And in fact, I was told that if this wasn't approved, there was a second plan. So I guess I would rather go with a second plan that didn't have to violate the the rules as they stand.
Okay. You have any other comments about, concern about the garage and the reduction?
I am concerned that with the pitch of the roof the way it is, it's going to increase the water flow down the driveway. Unless something is done to retain the water before it comes down, down over the hill. That's a major concern.
So I have your concerns as, you mentioned state statutes. What state statutes are you referring to?
Well, I didn't see any hardship for having to put it in the place where it is. I mean,
Yeah, and that's not a requirement. so-
there is room for a garage in many other places on the property. It's just that it's easier to put it where Mr. Davis wants
Okay,
it.
So
but-
there aren't really any state statutes that relevant to this that,
Well, I guess it was the, just basically the ones that talk about needing a variance.
okay, which is not applicable to this. And then your other concerns are the runoff towards the road and any damage to the road.
And damage to my property from runoff.
Yeah,
and-
that's the third one, is excavation work that would be done for the garage, potential water runoff down to your property. And then a concern about potential lessening of your property values. Is that correct?
Yes, and I would be concerned, Zach doesn't seem to be, Mr. Davis doesn't seem to be concerned about it, but his well is in an area that if he had an issue with it, he wouldn't have access to repair his well without, because he's only, have a small area that's in behind the garage, and there's no way a truck could get in there to get at his well without driving on my property.
Okay, do we have questions for Mr.
I have a
Aspinall?
question. This picture that you stated shows the road in front of Mr. Zachary's house.
No, that's his driveway, the bottom of his
And
driveway.
you also said that, is this his driveway or the road?
His driveway,
Okay. You said you had a road association.
yes.
Do you work as a team to kind of repair these things? I know where I live on a dirt road, whether it's our driveways or whatever, if it's affecting the lake in any way, we try to work as a team to fix it.
That's one of the things that I had talked about for doing the ditch work and so forth, and put some riprap in along the edges where the
Has
water.
anything been done in the past?
Yes,
So this could be fixed.
it could, but it still causes erosion and causes contribution to the silt that's getting into the lake. And so I'm concerned about it increasing with the
Okay.
lack of a space for the water to settle before it comes down the driveway.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Do you have any? Rick, do you have any? Just so you know, we'll go through all the regulations and the ordinances and what they say, and, you know, we don't try to have anything done that would contribute to erosion, but we have an opportunity here where if there are conditions we could put on a project to alleviate your concerns, for example, we can do that. So do you have any thoughts about if there are ways to prohibit the water running down onto your property or making water runoff going down the driveway because of the new garage any worse? We do have an opportunity here to put those conditions on the project. Would that alleviate your concern at all?
It's still going to be close enough so that if I put another building in there, it's going to be too close to where I'm hoping to build a cabin at one point. It would be better if we could make sure that no water was running onto my property or reduce the amount of water that is running down into the existing drainage system.
Okay. Any other-
Certainly, I don't want any water running across my property.
Yeah. No, I don't blame you for that.
No.
No questions at this time. Okay, thank you very much.
And it should be pointed out that as far as the hardship clause is for a regular variance, but not for the setback variance, that was the difference in the two. If he was going for a regular variance, then the hardship clause would come into play, but where a setback variance has a different criteria.
I also have 2 more pictures if you just wanted to look at them. So,
Sure. We'll give all these to Mary as well. Okay. So everybody can see.
the top picture, I also have a couple more copies if you want them.
You could give Mary one, that would be great.
The top picture is standing on the property line, looking toward Zachary's proposed area for the garage, where the exhaust pipe and the gas cans are, right there. And then I turned around and faced the other way on my property, and you can see the angle of the land coming from his property, so that you can see where the drainage would go if those rocks and things that are near that exhaust pipe there and those trees, if those trees were taken down and if it was graded the way it's normally graded from a building, from a foundation away from a building, it would be graded right toward my property.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak opposed to the project, the application? Is there anyone who would just like to speak in a neutral position regarding the application? No? Please.
I am Diana Martin, and I live at 60 Swans Road. And I have been at 60 Swans Road for 29 years. I am also a board of director for Raymond Pond Shores Association. I think that to address Mr. Aspinall's concerns with regards to drainage, if drainage, appropriate drainage for these concerns were placed into Zachary's plan for excavating, I think it could be alleviated, and I think it could be worked through with the help of Mr. Aspinall, who is our road commissioner. I think that the positioning of Mr. Davis's garage and what I am under the understanding of that they're trying to accomplish, which is to extend the main living space of their house, as well as give them a 2-car garage. I know the layout of the house. I knew the contractor that built the house. And for them to extend their living space to make it more accommodating, they need the garage on facing their property. It would be the right-hand side, which would be Mr. Aspinall's side of the property. I think that all of these things can be addressed quite simply, so as to not cause damage to Mr. Aspinall's property, to as well not cause damage to our road and/or excessive cost to our road association. And I think Mr. Davis would be quite accommodating should recommendations come back from the zoning board to build retention areas on his property in relationship to the building of this garage and addition. So My opinion personally as a neighbor, as well as from my position as on the association, is that Mr. Davis should be granted this variance to, for the setback zoning. That's just my opinion.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Any
you.
questions?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Davis,
Yes.
can we ask a couple more questions, if you don't mind?
No problem.
Do you have any comments about the suggestions, about the concern, of what could be done? Any ideas, thoughts to alleviate the concerns that Mr. Aspinall?
Yeah, I mean,
brought up?
I've heard what Lloyd has to say, and yeah, no, easily, I mean, I think some, kind of a berm or some sort of banking on that edge of the property to just ensure that the water doesn't run that way is, a pretty easy solution for that part of it. I don't believe it's gonna create any more runoff than we currently have, building the addition where it's gonna be, because it's already driveway, so it's not clearing an area or not, creating another driveway. I mean, that's part of the reason why it works out so well where it's going. If runoff's truly the main concern, then putting it, like building another driveway and having another access to the other end of the house, something like that, it's gonna just, it's gonna be far worse. So, yeah, I mean, during the project, we can grade the driveway. I don't know if I've seen people have like the little traps going down the driveway that can catch the water. There's options like that that we can do part of this process to slow the water down or whatnot.
And just one other question. Mr. Aspinall mentioned a second plan. Is there a second plan?
Not really. I mean, the only other option would be to maybe put it in front but none of those are true.
And do you have access to the well if the garage is put up?
Yeah, you could still get to it. I mean, if you had to drill another one, then I'd have to rethink that. But, I mean, to get to it, to pull the pump out or to get to the wire and all that would be readily accessible.
How would you do that around the backside?
They pull them out manually.
Pull it out,
Yeah,
Or they'll have it
you don't-
on,
the only time you need
cover.
equipment is in there is if you were gonna re-drill or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that could be a concern, but I could always put it on the other property, the lot next door if I had a major issue that the well had to be redone or something.
Okay.
So I mean, there are options.
Any other questions?
No.
Louise?
I do. It's kind of unfortunate that your house was positioned just the way it was, but we're living with it, right?
Yeah, and one thing, if you notice on that road is a lot of the houses, there's actually a lot of the other houses are real close to the property lines, and there's 2 doors down, the property on the other side of Lloyd's land, they're too close to their property line on one side. The house was built there, and then there was a setback reduction, and actually Steve and Marie's house on the other side was originally built on the line, and then I have a boundary line agreement with them to move the line over to give them what they need, so.
Now, I realized this one development, which this was derived from, were all 50-foot lots, meant for summer camps to be put on. And I don't think Mr. Swan ever envisioned year-round houses being built on these lots. So consequently, through the years, from probably the early 1920s, structures been put on these lots in any way that somebody wished to because we had no ordinances. But to get back to today, where you have a double lot, you have a lot of room off the other side of your house where you could put this thing, and even make it bigger if you wanted to. So I have concern about Mr. Aspinall's property, not just runoff, but the fact that you're encroaching on him. We do have ordinances that tell us what our setbacks are to be, and in order to break those ordinances means we're breaking the law, the town law. And I think it takes exceptional, not desire necessarily from the homeowner, but need to break these ordinances. So I'm really not in favor of putting your house over the line, because I think you do have an option. You can go in front, you could go to the other side, and it's unfortunate that it may disturb the layout of your home, but that's how I feel about it.
And we'll have more discussion once the public
Right.
portion of this closes. So any other questions from Mr. Davis?
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
you. Any further last comments from the public? Good? Okay, thank you very much. I'll close the public portion of this application and open it up to board discussion. And like I always like to, Scott, seeing the property, I'm not asking you, you're not gonna make our decision or anything, but just any comments that you would like to make with seeing the property and knowing what the project is.
No, I mean, it's just, it is what you find a lot around Raymond to begin with to Louise's point, that it's a typical throw the house up, and I think we're close enough to the lot type of a building back in the day.
Yeah.
Scott, do you have any idea when that house was originally built?
I do.
Just for
Around
our
that-
knowledge, it has nothing to do with this thing.
Certification for occupancy was issued in 1982 for an attachment, but it doesn't go back to
Yeah.
the original house.
Is that my house?
Yeah,
Can I speak? Because it's 2004.
2004.
Yeah, remember there was a bunch of wrong paperwork in the folder?
Okay, why don't
Oh,
you
yeah.
step up to the microphone real quick? You gotta-
We had reviewed the folder and there's a bunch of paperwork in there that's incorrect. So I believe the house was built in 2004. There is one drawing in there. It was a hand sketch with the original permit.
Yeah, I remember that now. Yeah, we ran into some of his permits were in another folder where they shouldn't have been, and it was just because of the way the lot numbers went. It's kind of screwed up everything. It was, we find that once in a while in some of those lots. But yeah, it was, I do remember that. It's not in here, but I do remember looking at it, and
I was just curious.
yeah, it's relatively new for
For
what it was,
small
yeah.
ones, development.
exactly.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
I mean, I hear your concerns, Louise, and I want to respect Mr. Aspinall's concerns, obviously, because he lives next door. I think the question I would have is if we say, no, you've got all this, you've got a double lot, you could put the garage, there is a lot of room over there. It wouldn't make any sense with the flow of the home. And one thing we will have to consider when we go through the ordinance is how much we're gonna increase the, portions of the impervious portions of the area. And you'd have to put a second driveway in, so that's something to consider. If we're talking runoff and concerned about runoff coming down the hill towards the road.
If you look on, you can't see it, but on Google Earth, he does where he has his intention for the proposed addition. That is gravel currently,
Yep.
so it is an impervious coverage
It
there
doesn't
already,
change.
but it's not the full width of what he's asking for. But there is, looks like there's probably, I'm guessing, 14, 16 feet worth of gravel there, width-wise,
Actually, the whole addition will land
within that gravel.
what's existing,
It's
so
like it covers.
the whole addition will fall within what's currently driveway. So the only thing that would be altered would possibly be just around the edge of it. So when they dig out for the foundation and stuff like that. But everything, the driveway space is actually laid out on that drawing if you have it there.
Yeah, yeah.
So the proposed addition would fall.
Some of it will be on it and there'll be
Yeah,
no change,
yeah,
no
they
other
used-
change except for a little bit around the edge maybe.
Yeah, just whatever they have to do as they do the earthwork around the property. But yeah, you remember when I had the stakes in there, they were out into the actual driveway itself.
And like I said, something else for us to consider is that we have the ability to put all kinds of conditions on this to, if we think those would alleviate the concerns that Mr. Aspinall has about runoff or washout or whatnot. Any other comments, questions, thoughts? Anyone? I can walk through the ordinance and just a couple, this is a non-conforming lot. It's a legal non-conforming lot. It's two lots that are together. This is LRR1. And the required setbacks, according to section 15 in the land use standards, on the side is 20 feet. That's what we're talking about. And he's requesting it down to, will it be 10 feet or 11? I think it says 11.8 on here, just so we have that
So I
exact.
put in my request for 11, or for the 10 feet. On that drawing, it shows 11.6 feet, and that actually didn't consider, when I worked with Chris Flynn on that, we put out the full width, we put 26. So it's actually 25 and a half because one wall is incorporated into the house. So to the very drip edge of the roof would be approximately 12 feet, and the foundation would be 13 feet.
Okay.
But
To
Raymond,
the edge,
Raymond goes by the drip edge.
right.
So to that drip edge, it'd be approximately 12 feet.
Okay. So it's, I never know how to say that correctly. Is it down to 12 feet?
Yes.
Okay, a reduction down to 12 feet is what we're
Yeah, I had
talking
asked for
about.
the 10 feet just because I didn't want it to get to a point where we were, I know sometimes people will come in and they're like, whether or not they put a trim board on the end of the house or something is the difference between whether it fits or not, and I didn't want to get that tight. I mean, if the board is more comfortable with 12 feet, I'm comfortable that it will fall within that area. That's just going to put it within like an inch and a half or something, and it's, we can do
Okay,
whatever works. I just asked for the 10, like I say, to give that little bit of room, margin of error, I guess you could say. If
okay, thank you.
thanks.
According to section 16G appeals, we do have appeals from decisions under the shoreland zoning provisions and variances from the shoreland zoning provisions are governed by the appeals and variance procedures contained in the shoreland zoning provisions and are not governed by Article 6. According to the powers and duties of the board, we do have the power to grant variance appeals, of which under variance appeals, just so you understand the difference, that's where the Board of Appeals may grant reductions from the minimum setback requirements set forth in section 15A of these provisions, according to the following criteria. So this is what we need to consider to decide whether we think we can approve this setback reduction request or not. 1, the setback reduction appeals are only available to reduce minimum requirements for setbacks of structures from lot boundary lines. Setback reduction appeals shall not be used and are not available from bodies of water as provided in these provisions. So, any comments on that? This is the side setback, it's not closer to the water. So does anyone have any concerns?
No.
Okay. So that one is one that would be met because we are going to the side. 2, setback reduction appeals may only be granted or only available for lots with a residential dwelling as the principal structure. The only structure
Is
on this
residential.
is a principal structure, is a residential dwelling. The Board of Appeals may grant a setback reduction appeal if the board finds that granting the setback reduction will not result in unreasonable interference with the privacy interest of the budding landowner. That's a matter of question and discussion on this. I think there are concerns, just my comments, there are concerns that make sense to me about erosion control and preventing runoff going to the neighbor's property next door. I don't have any paperwork or anything to show me that will necessarily negatively impact the value of the home next door. So I'm not sure about that one. And I know conditions can be put, we can consider conditions to try to lessen the runoff problem.
I think that's what we should do.
Louise?
Once it's there, it'll be there theoretically forever.
Mhm.
And I think, something that's engineered by a legal engineer or something could certainly be considered. But I still have great concern with the angle of the property going toward the neighbors that
And
even,
what is
something
your-
could fail and he's gonna have a yard full of water.
Okay, so it's the water runoff into Mr. Aspinall's
That's what
property
really
is your
bothers me.
main
Yeah.
concern. Rick? Any comments?
Looking at everything, I don't see that there would be a major extra amount of runoff in this project. Because the building is already being put on an area that's existing. I mean, I can see us making a stipulation that he does make sure that there's some kind of retention or some way to keep any extra water going onto that property. But I don't see that there's gonna be more water from this project.
Scott, can you speak on this one at all to options of what we could do
You
or
could
what
put it on the
happened?
conditions that he works with the home association or the road commissioner, you know, just to alleviate any problems with the runoff, and kind of just leave it up to them what they can figure out, but that something should be done, but you could just word it that one of the conditions that he works with the association to alleviate any runoff, I don't know, worries or problems, or I don't know the correct word on that one, but.
Well, for the road part, that would work. I'm not sure between the homes. That would have to be between the two of them, because the association,
Yeah, he could on that. I mean, his excavator, they could come up with a plan. I mean, basically it would be, you could just ask that he, on his property, that he does alleviate any kind of storm or water runoff from his property.
in what worst case scenario, like Louise said, say they did do something and then it did get worse. That's sort of out of our hands at that point.
Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, well, I mean, he can slow the water down getting to there as well by putting like some
Drainage.
crushed stone around the drip edge, anything it'll allow it to come out, but not quickly run off. Anything you can slow it down. He can do something like that. Like I said, an excavator, probably by looking at the land, may know a better way of how to divert it or contain it, so to speak, so it keeps the silt, catches the silt, and allows the water to run.
Joanne?
Yes.
I'd like to say that I disagree with Rick about the difference between a gravel driveway and its conduction of water and a roof.
Mm-hmm.
A roof, it sheets. It comes off in a manner like a river, whereas the gravel will absorb some of it as it comes down. So
But there's still
whatever
gravel
they would,
in front of the driveway, in front of the garage.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what he said.
There's still gravel in front of the garage.
Granted, but I still have concern that somehow they have to conduct the water off the eaves of that building into a dry well, whatever, to keep it from flowing that close to the property line.
I mean, there really isn't any codes as far as if you put your house up and your water diverts over into another property. However, that is, I think, by stipulating that he needs to work with containing the water as best as he can is about all you can do for that. I mean, not necessarily containing it, but at least try to hold it so, like I said, with the crushed stone on the drip edge, that'll keep it from running off quickly. He can, like I said, a berm can maybe divert it towards that culvert. There should be a a silt bowl there anyway to collect some of that silt before it goes out, if there's any. The other thing is too is gravel itself contains silt, so if we're covering gravel, your silt runoff will actually be less because it's running off to the building and hitting the ground there.
Right.
So if we can catch it before it goes out, that is a possibility. But I mean, it could, like Louise says too, but it also concentrate where it's going to run off. There may be some kind of a drainage on the side of the driveway that he may be able to do to keep it from going there and taking that silt out.
If I may, from Mr. Aspinall, can I ask you a question? You mind stepping up? All these conditions we talked about with the crushed stone around the garage, the berm on the side in between your properties, does any of that alleviate your concerns at all? Do you have, again, want to give you an opportunity to give us what other thoughts, are there any that would alleviate your concern of the water runoff down?
Well, generally speaking, when you have a foundation for a building, whether it be a garage or a home, there's a general pitch that comes from the side of the building away from the building, which is, how much?
It's 6 inches, for 10 feet, it's 6 inches every 10 feet.
So there's going to be if there's only 10 feet there, there's going to be a natural pitch away from the foundation of the garage toward my property in that 10 feet of 6 inches difference. So when that water runs the 10 feet for a 6-inch pitch, and you've only got 10 feet in there approximately to deal with the water, what's going to happen at the end of that? You know, even if he pitches it for 5 feet at 6 inches per 10 feet, so it'd be a 3-inch reduction in the height. There's still going to be an area where something's going to have to be done to collect that water that's coming toward my property. Whether there's enough room, that's my concern. Is there enough room in there to do something? You know, you build a brick wall that's 3 feet high to make sure nothing runs over there. Presently, the ground goes up, and there's rocks and trees and things, so it pitches up before it comes down toward my property. So if he's going to have it pitched the way it's normally done beside a building,
But a berm on the edge in between your properties, that wouldn't,
well, like I say, if you have a berm, but you've got the land pitched toward the berm, if it was flat and then there was the berm, I would be less concerned. But the natural pitch is away from a building.
so you wouldn't have any other ideas from Mr. Davis that you would feel good about?
Well, like I say, as far as that particular issue, I would like to see it further away, obviously, and if I don't know if he moved the garage forward and didn't have it exactly where he is, then that back corner wouldn't be so close, and it wouldn't be near that area where the water could potentially run down through, and it would give him more room for pitch.
Okay, thank you.
But I guess, if there was a way to put in a good wall that, as opposed to just some rocks or something like that, it would be better.
Okay, thank you. Louise?
I'd like to say, I think we still have to keep in mind of the 100-year storm, or hurricane, or whatever, that's gonna dump a whole lot of water. The other thing is snow load. Snow's gonna slide off that roof, I assume, and that's gonna make an embankment, which is going to creep onto Mr. Aspinall's land
Will
line
actually be
anyway.
pitched the other direction, so snow won't fall in his direction at all.
I'm sorry,
The roof will be pitched, like parallel to the road, the
Oh.
way the
Oh,
house is
okay.
now.
Okay.
So it's not gonna, the roof won't put any runoff or any snow or
Okay.
anything towards the
Alright.
direction of his.
okay, that's better.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right, so that still leaves us with 3. The Board of Appeals may grant a setback reduction appeal if the board finds that granting the setback reduction will not result in unreasonable interference with the privacy interests of the budding landowners. That makes me feel better knowing the roof pitch. I'm really torn here, Mr. Aspinall, because I don't want to, the last thing we want to do is cause water to come down onto your property. So I understand the difficulty with this. Any thoughts, Lynn?
My only thought is, you know, we see this a lot in Raymond, and there's so much technology now, things we can do with runoff, septic systems, etc. I'm sure there's a way we can fix this with some kind of conditions. I'm not a contractor, so I don't exactly know what, but it seems to me that we could fix this easily.
And how, what I'm hung up on is how can we guarantee that? Could we say that someone has to work with them on this project to?
Well, I mean, there are free options, so to speak. I believe DEP would come out, so would Cumberland County Conservation. So there wouldn't be any undue burden financially for the landowner. It could be an option. Other ones that you really don't want to get into would be like a gutter or a water collection. I don't think you want to get that detailed with this. Gutters usually don't do well in Maine, so to speak. They're getting better at it, but that would be, I think that would be something that wouldn't want to put that on a stipulation for the building.
I know I can only speak from my personal experience on my garage, and it's, many years ago, I got a setback reduction next to a right-of-way, and we did all the crushed stone around it for the drip edges to come off of, and we've never had a water issue. Go outside of that, and it is sloping, it's all sloping down right away from it. Not that that guarantees you anything, but.
Well, if it's properly installed, I mean, if they dig down a foot or so and then put the crushed stone on it, I mean, that's what slows it down.
Yeah.
By the time it builds up or it has that amount of that water in there, by the time it comes up to there, the rest of the water it basically works like what they call a level lip spreader. The water will rise up and go out and not shoot right off, which is what causes the erosion to begin with.
Right. Okay, so with that, do we feel this is causing an unreasonable interference with the privacy interests of the abutting landowners? Who feels that it is not causing an unreasonable interference with the privacy interests of the abutting landowner? You feel that it is?
Yeah, I have concern.
Yep.
I have concern.
So that's 3-1. And I will say with that, though, I want to consider conditions. I'm voting based on that we consider conditions for it. 4, in granting a setback reduction, the Board of Appeals may attach reasonable conditions which it may deem necessary. So with that, can we put in the conditions that we would suggest? I think the first, as Scott said, that Mr. Davis would work with the road association and the road commissioner, who I believe is Mr. Aspinall, to create an erosion control plan for the road. That's 1. I'm just putting the more general ones first. That's Scott
Understand.
mentioned. 2 would be for Mr. Davis to work with Mr. Aspinall regarding the property lines on the side of the home, and what Mr. Davis could do to prevent water runoff running down into Mr. Aspinall's property. And we can from there put some specifics, like the crushed stone work and,
Yeah, you could put the crushed stone drip edge properly installed around the perimeter of the garage or the addition.
Joanne?
yes.
What I would prefer to see, instead of us trying to engineer this thing,
Mm-hmm.
is to ask Mr. Davis to get a licensed engineer to make a plan for him.
Yeah,
Can we do that?
I agree, that should be
Yeah,
one of the
that would be,
conditions.
can we do that?
You can, as a board, can put any conditions you want. Doesn't,
I like
There's
that,
no-
Louise. So it would be for Mr. Aspinall? To work with?
Not Mr. Aspinall, Mr. Davis.
Okay, I was gonna
Yeah,
say, I'm sorry,
yeah,
that's what
yeah,
I thought you
yeah.
said, say, he shouldn't have to
Yeah, no, Mr. Aspinall shouldn't have to.
pay for that. Mr. Davis, to, tell me how you want to word that.
To have a licensed engineer develop a plan, an erosion plan, or whatever you wanna call it, to divert the water away from Mr. Aspinall's land.
I'd put in there as much as possible because you're not gonna cure it all with that, so.
Mr. Aspinall, would that make you more comfortable?
Yes.
And do we need to say to work with a licensed engineer to develop an erosion control plan, develop and put in place?
Yes.
You could say, well, yeah, that are a licensed professional rather than an engineer,
Okay.
because
Licensed
depending on,
Is that clear to you, Mr. Davis? A licensed professional?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I take my plans from somebody and have them come out and look at it and just share that. Water doesn't
To
go down.
develop and incorporate or put in place, I'll just say. Then with that, we wouldn't have to be specific with the crushed
Right.
stone, because
Let
that would
them
all be
figure
in the
it out.
plan for them to figure out.
I mean, it may be is how you worded it, because part of that was, that also, this crushed stone was also part of it running off
Mm-hmm.
towards the road too as well, not necessarily towards his property.
So putting that, adding that where to the,
Well, I mean, the only place he's gonna be able to do it is out back, cause if his
Yeah.
roof is pitched out front, it's gonna hit
Right.
the,
so we could say including crushed stone on the back side of the garage,
around
but
the,
wouldn't that be part of the?
yeah, I mean, you could all inclusive that it just, that, and being in touch with this, the licensed professional will look at all ways to, catch the rainwater or,
Deal with all the runoff, yeah.
yeah.
Catch runoff from proposed new garage. Okay, so I'll read those again. We have Mr. Davis would work with the road association and the road commissioner to create an erosion control plan for the road. And then for Mr. Davis to have a licensed professional develop an erosion control plan and put this in place to divert water away from Mr. Aspinall's property as much as possible, including all ways to catch runoff from the proposed new garage. Okay. A setback reduction appeal shall not be granted to enable construction or renovation that will create additional dwelling units. And just so everyone's clear, a dwelling unit is one or more habitable rooms designed intended for used for living quarters by one or more persons living together as a family with living, sleeping, sanitary, and cooking facilities, including within the meaning of cooking facilities, a stove, a hot plate, microwave oven, or other device for heating or cooking food. This is gonna be attached to the current living space, so we're not creating additional, is my
And
understanding.
it's not like having a freestanding garage with
Right.
a living space above it.
So does everyone agree we've met that requirement?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not a unit that he's creating, so, yep.
A setback reduction appeal shall not be granted to enable construction or renovation that will result in more than one garage on the lot that is subject to the appeal. Everybody's good with that. No setback reduction appeal may be granted that will result in impervious surface lot coverage of greater than 15%. And I think we had there was no concern that I could see from that. Hang on one second. We'll get
Well,
to-
you got a double lot there, so.
Right, I know the total on
Well,
the.
that too, and he's not creating any impervious because he's following in the gravel
In the
footprint.
gravel, yeah, with the
So, which
current.
is already impervious.
Gotcha, thank you very much. So there's no new.
Mhm.
Should we put anything in there about, putting in asphalt in a future date, or? That
No,
it
I don't
has to
think you wanna
remain
get into
gravel?
that. That's more of a financial burden to have put, I mean, asphalt would be great, yes, it keeps the runoff, but reclaim can do it, but I
Well,
don't
it could
think.
make it worse too, because it would,
Well, it can, but it all depends on what's in set. That's kind of why I don't think you'd really want to get into whether or not he has to put asphalt on it or not.
Hang on, let me just capture gravel. No, new, impervious. Okay. And I normally am not supposed to open it back up, and I know we've gone back and forth with this, but I really want to make sure we can try to make all sides happy with this. So I apologize to the board, but I am kind of violating our rule of, did you have one more comment about that, sir?
I guess I'm wondering about the person that does the proposal for the drainage. What kind of, I know you said
Licensed?
license. I guess I'm questioning what that
Would
actually
that go
means.
through you, Scott?
Well, it could be anybody. It could be a lot of the times, landscapers are licensed in can do the same thing rather than having an engineer look at it. They deal with the same issues. And so I figured it was best that we left it, give him a kind of little bit of an open area as to what he can do or who he can contact with, as long as they are, a lot of these are licensed.
Don't they have to be licensed for erosion control?
They have to be certified.
Certified?
But that's more on what they're supposed to do while they're working the land.
Yeah, right.
So not so
right.
much
So
as-
not so much the end result.
Yeah.
of what they're putting in. Is everybody okay?
Sure.
You
I
have
mean,
a
and then I
couple-
go back to engineer. You know, I
Okay, and I would just like to share that one of the board, I'm Diana Martin. Sorry,
you.
I'll sign me in again. One of our board of directors and a resident in our neighborhood is an actual engineer, licensed and working for Woodward and Curran in Portland. And he is readily available to both Mr. Aspinall and Mr. Davis. We have that, they have that accessible to them.
Thank you. I don't know if we can dictate a
Yeah, who you have to
No.
go
certain
see.
person at this
No.
point.
He
No.
certainly would be useful, though,
Yeah.
to oversee.
Yeah, I mean, Woodward and Curran, I mean, I've worked with them before when I was in Gorham. They are very, very good. If they have that ability, that's great.
But I don't think it's for us.
I wouldn't,
to-
yeah, I think you'd just leave it open, and
Yeah.
if that's who they use, then great.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, that's a great suggestion. You guys heard that, so that's open. But as we've said, a licensed professional, so. I mean, I don't know that we can have you review the plan or make sure that it's a proper licensed professional that does
Well,
this.
you could have them, they could submit a plan for runoff. They can do that.
Erosion control
Yeah.
plan to you.
Yeah.
I hate to put more on you.
Oh, no, it's just more of just having somebody's got to draw it out and
Yeah.
going through all that. It's as an expense, but
Would that help you, Mr. Aspinall, if we had him as a third party to see what this plan is and make sure it's a licensed professional that's drawn it up?
Joanne, the other thing is it would be in the file. to refer to in
Yes.
the future.
Yep,
Well, I'd want it anyway, even if it wasn't one prior to, but if we had one at the end because of the condition that was put on it.
this will all be written up, Mr. Davis, just so you understand, but again, it would be for Scott to see the plan from the licensed professional.
Yeah, so I do like safety for a living, fire alarms, things like that, so I live in the world of codes and permits and everything else, I have no problem with any of that.
Great, okay. Thank you all for your help. That's really good. Setback reduction appeals may only be granted the minimum extent necessary to accomplish the purpose of the appeal. Setbacks may not be reduced by setback reduction appeal to less than the following absolute minimums. And what we're talking about is the side setback of 10 feet. So there has to be, at a minimum, the 10 feet between the two. Do we need to, he had said 12 could be cutting it close. Do we have, we should specify?
Yes, you do need to specify what amount.
Yeah.
You should.
Do we want to say the 12 and,
I mean, on here, you got 11.6, I think it says.
yeah,
I believe Mr. Flynn said that he would come out and check it too,
Yep.
didn't he?
Yeah, Chris said Chris Flynn, the surveyor who did all those drawings.
Yeah, so we could get, you could get very, you could do, I mean,
Yeah.
and you could do the minimum that you guys feel comfortable
so
with.
the absolute minimum that we could set it to is,
Well, you can go all the way down to 10 feet, but he's only asking for
right,
a setback of 11, was it 11.8 was in there?
11.6 is what's
Yeah.
in there, basically.
But you
That
could do,
measurement didn't include-
but you can do like 11.8 or 11.10 or something like that to keep it rounded and however you want to. I mean, as far as being the minimum.
Could you do to 11.5 feet?
that's going to say 11 and a half to make sure that there's no issues.
That's like, it's about 6 inches.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's my fault, I'm talking
Sorry,
to Mary.
could you
Yeah.
please do 11.5 feet then? That way, that gives me approximately 6 inches of wiggle, just, I'm not trying to push the limits, I just don't wanna get to a point where we're arguing over.
Right, and I didn't want to go to
Facial
10 if we
or
don't
something.
need to, that's what I'm saying, to the minimum extent.
Yep.
And I always know sometimes it's things are a little bit off there, so are you guys comfortable with 11 and a half?
I am.
Down to 11 and a half,
To 11 feet,
11
6 inches.
okay.
Thank you.
So setback reduction to 11.6, okay. Is everyone good with that, 11.6?
Yes.
Okay. 0. With that, we had 4-0 on all and 3-1 on one. With that, the board will vote to grant your setback reduction. And we need to have a vote on that. So all those in favor of granting based on what we went through? All those opposed, so that would be 4-0. Because how it would work is we would have to find against these, whereas we didn't have any majority on those. We have to have all in favor on all of those, and that's how it came out with the vote, Mr. Aspinall. So with that, you did meet the requirements, and we have the conditions that we'd read. Any last comments?
No.
Questions? Okay.
So you probably should have, did anybody ask that we bring it to a vote and then you vote?
Motion.
A motion?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that would be appropriate. That's why we've gone all over the place.
I'll
Like
make a motion that we bring it to a vote.
Okay, second?
Second.
Seconded. All those in favor of granting the setback reduction to Mr. Davis? All those opposed? Thank you very much, Scott, for keeping us in line. Okay. That ends the application. Thank you very much for all your comments. We really appreciate it. It's very helpful. Okay, for the board.
Can I ask
And-
one question? How
Yes,
does the
sir.
process go from here? Will you be writing something out and contacting me, or?
Yes, they'll have a decision, then it has to be registered to Registry of Deeds in Portland.
Okay, so can I
And-
just come see you, say, next week then?
How long does that, for that to be written up, I don't know.
I'm not, Joanne usually does the planning.
As far as the findings of fact, I'll
facts.
get them done right away,
Yeah, I
so
don't
that you
do
could
that.
have
I'm not-
something for next week.
Remember, I won't be in tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll work on them this week, and like before, once they're done, you guys can read them and go in and sign them off, so that we could have something.
I mean, I could give you a call as soon as I
Okay,
get them.
I was gonna say, if I just keep
Yeah.
communication with you, I'll
Yeah.
put them in.
Okay.
Right, perfect, thank you.
Yep, no problem, thanks. So with that, any of you that would like to leave or would like to stay, it is totally your choosing. Next on the agenda, to approve the findings of fact from the Roma Dobson decision that we had.
Is everybody a copy?
Yep.
With that?
I don't think I do.
You don't have a copy?
Maybe I don't.
You guys all got a copy of the, did you get a copy to read of the draft?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I thought you emailed it out.
I did.
Okay. Maybe I'm wrong.
I'd like one, thank you. I didn't bring it.
And we can go through it.
You have one there?
I wasn't here for that.
Oh,
Yeah, that's right.
Yep,
Rick
I
wasn't
did.
here, yeah.
Make me greedy.
Eh,
Anybody else need a copy?
No, I do have one. Okay,
And
that's good.
I know Louise had a couple, a few things. They were very good. And Len, I can give you time to look it over. As we go through these, you can look it over too to see if you have any concerns, questions, comments. We can read it, so whatever makes you more
I'll be
comfortable. Louise, do you want to read yours, or you want me to just go through them?
No, just go through.
Okay.
I mean, they're nitpicky, but
No, they're very good. On the page where I had the background, first paragraph, down near the bottom of it, where it says an abundance of off-road parking is available. I think it was very astute for Louise to pick that up. I think my intention was to put what the background that the applicant presented, and the way that's worded is inappropriate, because we did not determine that there was an abundance of off-road parking for that. So I'm thinking that we scratch that whole last sentence. So that paragraph, I'll read it. On Monday, June 24th, 2019, the Raymond ZBA held a public hearing on a conditional use permit in the rural residential zone. Mr. Roma and Ms. Dobson own, did I get that backwards? Is that right? Own the Roma farm, which includes a farmhouse and barn built in the 1800s. They purchased the property in 2002 and have been renovating while keeping all of the original structure of the barn in the process. They would like to hold a few seasonal events from July to the first week of October: bridal showers, weddings, wedding renewals, birthday parties, each year at the property as additional income. The capacity would range from 30 to 140. The barn can hold 30 to 65. Large outside tent for larger groups. And then I think my last sentence was an abundance of off-road parking is available on the 45 acres combined between the abutting two properties the applicants have purchased. I'm not sure that's even necessary, because it has an opinion piece in it of what they stated, so I think we could remove that whole sentence.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I'll strike that. Then it's just the facts of what their application was about. Then we have about the site walk. I think there was anything with that one. Fourth paragraph, let me get to.
nothing.
Under board comments discussion. Fourth paragraph, so that would be under, next to last page, where it says board comments discussion. Here, go to, you got it?
Okay.
Pollution, where it says Louise expressed concern about various types of pollution. I think, Louise, you wanted to change that to mean audio pollution and possible light pollution.
Yep.
Yep. So I have no objections. Anyone, you have any objections to adding that in, Len?
No.
Okay. Add audio and light pollution. Okay, 7th paragraph. Which is right, the last paragraph. Where it says the events, midway down, the events the applicants would hold would be private, and I had invite only. Just to clean it up, I think Louise, you'd suggested we change that to invitation only.
Right.
Yep. And the last sentence, Louise agreed and added, it also mean, yeah, that was a typo, municipally owned, that we should put, it also, it
Just-
might also mean municipally owned, correct?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll throw might in there. And Mary, I can make those corrections and send it in.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I can, because I've got them right here. So what I'll do, you guys, I'll make those exact corrections that we spoke about. I'll send it in to Mary and I'll let you know when it's there. She can go in and sign it.
Okay.
And I'll try to get the other one done real fast, and maybe we can do both at the same, so you can go in and do both at the same time. And it'll be you reviewing. The only problem, you'll have to review the other one and send me recommended edits. We'll see what we have to do from there. That sounds good. Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's good. For bylaws workshop, I think all we really wanted to do was, because we haven't had an opportunity as a fairly newer group together, I don't think I ever have since I've been on this board, is just read through the bylaws, just so we know what they are, and maybe point out some future if we feel we need to make any changes to them. Does that, thank you. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yep. Yep, it's
Do
good.
that? Rick? Would anyone else like to read these?
I can read it if you want.
Go ahead.
Go for it, Louise, that'd be great.
Article 1, Purpose and General Provisions. Section 1, the purpose of these bylaws is to provide written rules of procedure for the Town of Raymond Zoning Board of Appeals, ZBA. Section 2, the ZBA derives its authority from 30 MRSA, Section 4963-2, Article 6 of the Raymond Land Use Ordinance, and Section 16, Administration G, Appeals of the Raymond Shoreland Zoning Provisions. Article 2, Membership. Section 1, appointment to and composition of the ZBA is governed by Article 6, Section A of the Town of Raymond Land Use Ordinance. Section 2, in order to maintain the status of a member in good standing, all members are required to attend both regularly scheduled and special meetings. Absence for more than 2 consecutive meetings without notification to the ZBA chairperson will be cause for disciplinary action as outlined in Section 4 of this article. Section 3, it is strongly encouraged that all members attend as many meetings, workshops, and trainings as possible in order to gain experience and insights into the operational procedural workings of the ZBA. This is especially important for new members. Section 4, the ZBA chairperson shall recommend to the Town of Raymond Board of Selectmen the dismissal of any member of the ZBA unable to maintain the status of a member in good standing. A ZBA member may be dismissed for cause by the municipal officers before the expiration of the member's term. Article 3, Election and Responsibilities of the ZBA Chairperson. Section 1, the ZBA shall annually elect for their membership a chairperson to preside at all meetings. This election will take place at the first regularly scheduled meeting of the year. Section 2, the responsibilities of the ZBA Chairperson include spokesperson for the ZBA, development of meeting agenda, conduct of efficient, orderly, impartial, and respectful meetings, assignment of a pro tem chairperson at any time, utilization of the alternate member to establish a quorum. Article 4, Conduct of Meetings, Workshops, and Executive Sessions. Section 1, all meetings of the ZBA will be announced through public notice per Maine statute. Section 2, all meetings will be conducted according to Robert's Rules of Order newly revised in all cases to which they are applicable and which they are not in conflict by these bylaws. The chairperson may waive any rule of order upon showing good cause. Section 3, a quorum shall consist of 3 ZBA members. All actions shall be determined by a vote. A majority of the quorum present is needed to pass any motion. When a vote on a motion ends in a tie vote, the motion fails. The determination of a quorum for any vote shall not include any member who cannot participate in that vote due to a conflict of interest. Section 4, all comments, questions from applicants, applicant representatives, or the public shall be made through the chairperson. The chairperson shall rule any applicant representative, member of the public, or ZBA member out of order for making inappropriate statements or comments. The chairperson reserves the right to limit the time allotted for testimony or public comment. Section 5. All meetings, special meetings, and workshops of the ZBA are open to the public and governed by the Freedom of Information Act, with the exception of executive sessions. At regular and special ZBA meetings, the public is allowed to comment on specific agenda items. During workshops, the public may be allowed to comment provided there is a majority vote in the affirmative by the ZBA members present. Article 5. Amendments to bylaws. The ZBA shall have the authority to amend these bylaws by vote at a regular or special meeting, provided that all members receive written notice of potential bylaw amendments at least 7 days prior to the date of the meeting. This was effective April 28, 2014.
Great. Any concerns with the bylaws?
I don't have a concern, and I just don't understand what, according to Robert's Rules of Order newly revised, means.
I'm
What
with
is
you.
it?
That's the title of a book.
Yeah, I'm with you on that, because I know, I feel badly, because I am not by any means highly knowledgeable of Robert's rules. I've tried to go in, I have studied some of them to try to at least be able to.
I've got a little history on that.
Yeah.
While I was town clerk, they were using the book, you know, the whole
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
And they discovered that they had this revised book, which is a shortened version. So it makes it a lot easier to find questions and get your answers. But they have copies of it down at the town office.
Yes.
Okay.
But I mean, is this book, what does it say? Does it say rules should be this?
It's not as specific as that, unfortunately. Basically, it's like you have to have a motion, you have to have a second, and you have to have the vote.
It's
in order to
basically
pass
just telling
something.
you how to run a meeting.
Right, how to
Yeah,
run,
yeah,
how to
essentially,
properly run.
Essentially, yeah.
I know I've
And-
got some here I could share with you sometime about, on how to chair a meeting and the basic Roberts rules. You can go online and find some of that stuff.
And the
too,
reason
and-
it's mentioned with a title is because there are other ways and books on holding meetings.
Yeah,
Robert's Rules is probably the best known and most widely used.
Mm.
But it's a gargantuan document.
Thank you.
yeah. Right. So I share with you, Len, the same thing. I just feel badly, like I said, that I know, trying to run these meetings, that I don't, and I am, by all means, any of you who know them well, and you find that we're out of procedure, call,
I think like he did tonight. we need a
exactly,
motion.
that's
Yeah.
perfect,
Yeah.
that's perfect,
Yeah.
and we did
We
go
try and
over
keep
them.
it straight.
Yeah, exactly, so, I mean, I at least feel good that I think we're following the major things that we need to.
The only thing that I saw in here that under Article 3, Section 1,
Mhm.
this election will take place at the first regularly scheduled meeting of the year. Do we need something more definitive than that? Because when is the first regular schedule?
I think we said it's the
Fiscal
first
year?
meeting in July.
It's,
July being the
It's
start
u-
of the new fiscal year, the new town year. the way
which is
we're looking at it.
July 1st, but the first regularly scheduled meeting of the year would probably start July 1st, and
That's what
maybe that should be in there.
Or we had like a definition of what is the start of the year. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
like it normally would be they'd say calendar year would mean January, so.
Right. And this just says of the year, it doesn't say fiscal year or anything.
Hmm.
Can we make that change?
Is that an ordinance or is that
No.
laws?
No, it's just our bylaws.
Oh, bylaws.
Is our bylaws? I mean, it would just be very clear then.
No, I agree, because we were
It's
confused.
just
We
the
all were
words.
confused as
Yeah.
to when it was
Yeah.
supposed to
Yeah.
be. So,
Because appointments generally are done the first selectmen's meeting after town meeting, which is, the first Tuesday of June.
so speaking from your perspectives of working with the town at time, should it say of the fiscal year?
Yeah, the fiscal year, I'd use fiscal year.
Does that make sense for you, Mary?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, I guess if the fiscal year became the calendar year, like it is in some towns, that might muddy the waters. But
So.
they could move town meeting too, so
Yeah,
if they moved it back to March, then we'd have to,
We would-
I'd keep it fiscal
I'd say
year.
fiscal, because I think that would flow for
Yeah.
either one. So Mary, do you have this? I mean, I don't mind making the change.
No, I can, that'll take me a minute.
So next time we have a meeting, we can just sign off on that,
Mm-hmm.
like they did? Okay, great. Good. Thank you. Let's see. 5, Sue had brought to Mary's and my attention, I think both of us and Scott probably, about the possibility of changing the day that we meet from Monday to Tuesday, the last Tuesday of the month, for various reasons. I was not opposed to it, and my plan was to bring it to the group tonight to see if there was any opposition. Mary found out in the meantime, in the latest version of the ordinances, that it says in there, in Article 6, Board of Appeals, item C1, page 25 out of 136, that it's, that we have to meet on the last Monday of the month. So it's actually in there.
Thank you.
So, what, I guess, what's the procedure?
Well, that would have to go through town meeting.
Right.
Because it's the ordinance.
Right,
So you really, there couldn't be any, we can make note of the change, and then when we discuss the changes for the ordinance, that would be one that we would ask.
So do I bring this back to Sue's attention and say, this is the situation?
I copied her on, she was on that email.
Right, do we have to make a formal request for them?
No, it shouldn't be, not for that.
I think verbal would be enough.
Yeah, okay. So you think we're covered,
Mhm.
if we've told her? But what I can tell her, though, does anyone have any opposition to that, if we could change it?
I do not.
I don't.
Well, I mean, it could, you never know what the next board is gonna be.
I know.
It could be something different, so.
At this moment in time, so we would probably likely, if it were going to
Mhm.
come up for a change at that point in time, depending on who's on the board, we should vote at that.
Well, the only other thing I can think of is not to have it in there at all.
Well, the previous one was generic, and it just said once a month that we had to meet.
Yeah.
So I was very surprised, that was a good catch on Mary's part, that they changed it to be that specific.
Mm.
Not sure
I
why.
mean, why couldn't we change it back to being non-specific?
You could, I mean, we'd have to see why originally it was changed to Monday to begin
It's part
with.
of what was changed here was that it said, I think it said shall meet monthly, essentially is what it said.
Okay.
As opposed to as needed. So it
Well,
was-
that's pretty
it
much
was
what we
committing-
do.
It was committing you to being every single month.
Well, in the
Yeah.
past,
Yeah.
that we would go months and months and months without meeting, so I can
Yeah,
see why that,
Yeah.
yeah.
But
Was it
does,
worded for the planning board?
Yeah, that's
Is it
what-
as needed? I can't remember.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
As needed.
that makes more sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why this one change is as needed was put in. I didn't realize that there was changing it from last Monday.
Well, we've
I
got
thought that was
plenty of
in there already, but
we got plenty of time before this can be changed. I think what the first thing, as we've done, is pointed out to Sue that we can't because it's in the ordinance, and when the time comes, we can bring it up at the meeting before there's gonna be a change. So,
Which really should be probably January.
yeah, probably that's when, yeah, exactly.
'Cause
Okay.
that's when town meeting warrant articles
yeah,
start
that's when
rolling.
we'll put it all together.
Yeah.
Have that. I'll just make a note, January, consider. 6, code enforcement officer communications.
We got nothing.
What?
So far, we have
Right.
nothing, we haven't had any even inquiries yet, so far.
So that means we have nothing for next month.
Yep.
Because,
Yeah.
It's
once-
already, but
Yeah,
beyond.
we're at a deadline, so
Yay,
okay.
got a
Thank
mini
you.
vacation
thank you.
at the end of summer.
Yay, thank you very much. And then we need a motion for adjournment.
Make a
I so
motion that we
move.
adjourn.
I second.
Seconded. Okay. Thank you very much.